various reasons. So she created Keep SLS, and you can see it had you could form a group to talk about anything in your portfolio, or you could allow people to blog about, open your portfolio to other students or other people, and they could make an entry in their blog wherever it was, and it would tie directly back to the system. They could just make a comment on a document without having to be part of a group or do it in a blog. And they could tag and do some other interesting things. So she developed that, tested it in a way of just asking people, again, proof of concept. Does it make sense? And then she's been testing it in various classes since then. And she has not completed the next step of that research, but she did graduate. Now, okay, I'll give you another 5 minutes, or maybe even less. Is the only dissertation we've done that hasn't actually modified or created an artifact. And he looked at a gaming environment, which was it was another thing that we wanted to test out. And we had a management professor who was specializing in leadership and teaching leadership, and they worked together to test out some ideas about how games could be used in a leadership context. John Stager, who Merle knows very well, looked at the idea of how do you create a virtual, large space dialogue called a Bohmian dialogue. Has anybody encountered a Bohmian dialogue before? It's a specific set of rules that some guy named David Bohm laid out to facilitate real discussions about important problems. You get people, large groups of people, to discuss problems. It's a little bit, in a sense, like a Robert's Rules of Order, but not as complex or as or related to specific decision making, but just to find ways that a lot of people could discuss things that that felt important to them. And John looked at how you could institute that kind of process on a week. Nathan Garrett's studied the Claremont conversation and looked at some ideas like making students, other students' work available in a simple format to all their classroom colleagues. So in this, I should do it over here. In this screenshot, it's a very simple interface, but the idea is that here's the e-portfolio entry that a student is writing, and on the right side is an example of mousing over any other of the other students in the person's group or class and seeing how they've attacked the same problem, writing an entry in an e-portfolio or doing a particular assignment. So making everything in the class open to everybody else. There's no sort of hiding of, oh, I'm doing it this way. Anybody can look at anybody else's work, and trying to understand to what extent that impacts how students are perceiving their learning, the kinds of learning that they're doing. And essentially he found that students were able to identify, weaker students are able to identify what better students, who the better students are in the class. They do look through things, and that they actually reported getting ideas and learning from students who were doing better in the class than students who were not doing as well in the class. In the end, it wasn't, you can't measure, he didn't really find that, or he didn't really measure how students did in the class, what their final grade was. But just in general, whether that was a help to them books. And this screenshot's just an example of how L's interface looks. And then it was sort of, yeah, they were competing about e-portfolios, and he didn't really extend Sonia's work because he did an e-portfolio plugin for L, rather than for using the key SLS. So
this was this actually used by students, or was
yeah, absolutely. This was used
both
by
Sonia's and his sister?
Yeah, Sonia's first step was just having students use it, but not in a classroom context, just to report whether they felt it would facilitate their learning, what components they liked, and so on. This is an evaluation thing, proof of concept. But she's actually used it in 3 separate classes now, and she just hasn't written up the final results. But she's been customizing it and playing with it a little bit too. So I'm not sure, since she's graduated, I'm not working directly with her on that. This one was used with very directly with 2 MBA classes, or no, 2 undergraduate business classes, and then with a number of other business classes that just had to do 1 entry. So let him listen to me. I'm talking to him. So
I'm trying to. That's why I'm losing both track.
You're under 20. You're not under 25.
No, I'm not.
You can't do that.
Yeah.
So you want to? I mean, I can talk about other stuff. No. So there were 2 classes where he used it throughout the class, Nathan, and then a number of classes where he just tested it on 1 use of the system. So it was kind of like just to add just some sample size.
Earlier you're saying that the e-portfolio was for everything that the student had done.
It can be. That's the standard use of it.
If everybody can see everything that everybody else has done,
right?
Is it? I don't know about Claremont, but here, man, you have massive plagiarism.
Well, you can't because it's all timestamped, right? So if somebody wants to copy somebody else's, they, by definition, they've identified themselves as plagiarizers because whatever is there first becomes the property of the first student. So they know better. They have to build off of either try something different or build off of what somebody's done. It works. I can guarantee you that I've been doing this for years in different contexts. It works really well. You can't plagiarize. But
these are undergraduates.
Nathan tested with both undergraduate and graduate, but the main test was with undergraduates. Business students like juniors, 3rd-year business students. But they knew the rules, and it has to be with smaller classes. I mean, if there were 250 people in the class, you can't keep track. You just couldn't.
Yeah, you wouldn't
play with that.
You would not notice the plagiarism.
No, you can't do it unless you have a secondary system that looks at all the time stamping and does all that comparison. We use something called Turnitin. Do you have that here? It's a Turnitin.
We've got something in MMLS that lets you hand in stuff.
Turnitin actually compares your work to everything else in the database, and if there's any similarity, and it's not just in that university or in that college, but all things that have been turned in to Turnitin. And it does a comparison and gives you a percentage. So if I turn something in before you do, it's in the database. The comparison then says, flags it, and says, X% is exactly the same words or the same text as something else. Yeah, that's a really good, Turnitin's a very good. So if you have Turnitin with that other piece, you can probably even use it for larger classes.